Welcome to Truth Emotion Studios. This is my YouTube channel. My guest for you today is Kelsey Hoff. She is a licensed therapist from Saskatchewan, Canada. Did I say that right?
Yeah, that was fairly good.
Okay. Well, Kelsey and we are hoping to speak with each other about what we call missionary guilt and offer you hopefully some healing thoughts. This seems to be a topic that especially people that come out of very missionary oriented groups such as YWAM or the Navigators, there's many groups or fringe groups or my group that didn't officially have any affiliation. Many people that come out of that are left with this sense of, I'm not saving the world right now. I'm not worthy to be alive. All the people that are now going to hell because of me, God will demand their blood from my hands. So obviously that sounds very unpeaceful. That sounds very mental health issues inducing. And that's what we want to be talking about today. So Kelsey, thank you so much for hanging out today.
Thanks for having me. This is a great conversation
To have, yes.
to have. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, Kelsey, I wanted to uh, talk about how when I came out of my group, I had been trimmed like a soldier to spend every free minute either reading the Bible, doing something spiritual, going out in the streets, talking to strangers, um, making something that would make me worthy of being a follower of Christ, always with the intent to save people because they're all going to hell, right? So if I don't save them, nobody can. And when I came out of that group, I was left with this constant feeling of guilt. We call that now missionary guilt. I wasn't able to just sit down and watch a movie or relax. I had to, when I came here, my first few months, find people that were into prayer ministry, that were into Bible reading groups, into some kind of a gathering thing. So 4 out of 7 days out of the week, I would spend my nights in some kind of a situation like that. And I would feel like I'm still living up to that potential. Like I'm proving to my old leaders, I'm not a failure for God just because they said so.
Hmm.
If I came to you with this, I'm so exhausted, I'm afraid, I'm not doing enough. How would you, as my therapist, respond to that?
Yeah. Well, I would be really interested in where these rules came from. These rules that are kind of a measuring stick of what it means to be a follower of Christ, or what it means to be productive or contributing to the kingdom. And so, for yourself, where did those rules come from? Who made it so that you needed to be doing that all the time in order to be worthy?
Yeah, I can say without a doubt that it wasn't an unspoken rule. It was a spoken rule.
Wow.
If
Yeah.
we did things as a group, like we at some point would be separated from men, so we as women would do something together. Someone eventually would say, when are we doing something spiritual?
Oh, wow. So
Yeah,
just to chill out and
nothing like that. Yeah.
just enjoy one another's company
Oh, that's not good enough.
with your people
Yeah.
wasn't really okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as a therapist, I would really be interested in exploring how, well, on one side, what is that doing for you? What is that protecting you from, or what is that allowing you to be part of? So I can imagine that that group, there would be belonging that would come from buying into that.
Mhm.
Is that true?
Oh yeah, it felt so like I have a purpose and I have other people with me in this purpose,
Right.
which
And
led
they're
camaraderie that I didn't know before.
right. And everyone's affirming this, that you belong, or because you're doing all of these things, you have a purpose, and we're all in this purpose together. Whereas people who aren't doing this, they're just lost, or they don't actually belong, or they're not living for this higher standard. And so I would ask about that, but I would also ask like what's the cost, you know? Because if you're asking these questions, you've probably seen some underlining issues that are coming up, maybe extreme stress or anxiety or exhaustion. It sounds really exhausting.
Yeah. I remember lying on the carpet. That would happen every once in a while, and just sobbing and crying out to God that this world that I find myself in, that I get it. I am built for this. I'm supposed to fill this role, but I can't in all good conscience ask other people or try to recruit other people into this life, because it was too much. It was too much. But it always came with this, what I call too much. My leaders would say, you're not even half there.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did that feel like, to feel like it's too much, I can't do this, and then to have your leaders who you look up to say you're not even half there?
I was such a failure.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that would do for your self-esteem or your sense of being a contributing member of society.
Right. Yeah, not very much. I would pretend like I had it all together, and
Mhm.
this group is awesome and helping me and getting me on the right path. But then at the end of the day, I would know to myself that this life, it's almost like the life before was better. But
Mm.
then I would tell myself, but then I was ignorant. Ignorance is bliss. So I was still in sin. And of course, sin is fun, but then you go to hell. And so it's better to suffer now and then go to heaven later. Something like that. Though there wasn't even a surety that I would make it, because I was never good enough.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious, what was enough?
Yeah, what would that look like? That's a very good
Yeah,
question.
and that would be a question I would ask a client. Like, tell me, like, when do you know that it is enough? Or is there someone in the group who did attain that enoughness? And what was that?
Ah, the leader was like a squirrel, a very active man, probably a high achiever, but also without any empathy. So what we would see is, we would bring new people into the group, or he would bring new people into the group. And one time we all went on a trip to a beach in Germany, and it was incredible. Like, we were there as a group to kind of hang out, and then something happened. We all started talking to the youth that was there, and then we had a mass baptism of maybe, like, I don't know, 10 young people got baptized that day. And that day felt like we've done it. Like, we went there to chillax, but the spirit fell, and all these youth got saved that day, and they wanted to get baptized that day. And then
Yeah.
the long-term effect of all that would be that one day, a few weeks in, the leader would say, yeah, they weren't cool. And then it would all be gone, and we would never talk to these people again. And
Oh,
so it would never last. Whatever, if the goal was to get them to be a part of our group, or that he would get to be their apostle, it would never stick.
mm-hmm.
So it would leave us with this, wow, now we have to see if we can maybe make a mass baptism of 15 people. But it would be a nice place to start if we could just get one new person into the group and have them stay for a while, because it would never
Right.
lead to staying.
Yeah. So it's a very works oriented
Yeah.
and numbers
Mhm.
oriented
Yeah.
philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And then you think, well, but that's not enough either. 7 billion people in the world, and you save 10 today.
Right. Yeah. So you're never enough. Yeah. So how did that affect your mental health?
Mm.
And like what are the signs of this type of mentality not being healthy
Mhm.
mentally? I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah. I know that I lied to myself a lot.
Mm,
On the other hand, you could say I positive talked myself a lot. So,
okay.
it's kind of a mix of that. Like, imagine this. My year 2009 was insane. I graduated with the master's degree program, so all these exams, all these papers, I in a few the same months I prepared a wedding an international wedding. My husband wasn't able to help because he didn't speak much German. And then I had a huge fallout with my own birth family because I didn't go to my sister's wedding because I'm a missionary to my town and I can't leave, and for various
because you need to measure up to these expectations.
right. Yep. And so all that was happening at the same time, and I kept it together. And you know how there's this word bridezilla in America, or in our world. Like, I used to think I can do anything because I have my purpose. If you're staying focused on what's expected of you, there was something that not doing that or freaking out was just not an option. So it's something weird like that, but it made me mentally very, and maybe that's the sign that I wasn't well. It made me very unflexible in my thinking. I was very controlling. Everything had to be exactly the way I wanted it to be. But my cult people, my leaders, they had always the top word, so that the last word, so they could say, well, you're doing it all wrong, and then I would feel awful. But like with everybody else and everything else, it was like, this has to be this way. And so I tried to control what I could control. I had all the answers. I studied theology, so
Right.
I would show my smart insights, my superiority with that. And just like I said, this flexibility that you would have when you're healthy to take on different perspectives. I couldn't do that. It was black and white. I was right and everybody else was wrong.
Right. Yeah. But I imagine that black and white thinking was a mask of some sort, or a way to manage all of the pressure.
Yeah, and it had to be true. That's just kind of it. It's like with the people that are now in this conspiracy stuff. It has to be true. You've already paid so much into it.
Yeah.
And if that's not true, then that might not be true, and then everything will fall apart. And then why do you go to college anyway? And why do you want to get married? Like, why even do all of that? And so I think to hold this whole world that I created together, it all had to be true.
Right. Yeah. It makes me think of your conversation with the authors of the subtle power of spiritual abuse. One of them is talking about how if you've given this much already, how can you go back? So then you give this much, but then you give that much, and you give that much, and you get stuck in this cycle that tells you, well, I've already given so much already, so how can I possibly just let it all fall? And then that will keep people for long periods of time in this cycle without leaving. Yeah.
A lot of that is, what will others say? I'm
Yeah.
making a fool of myself. I'm embarrassing myself. They will say, I told you so.
Right. Well, what do you have left outside of that group too?
Right.
Yeah.
That circle gets smaller and smaller. Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you do to work with that missionary guilt after leaving? Because I can imagine while you're in it, there's not much well, like, maybe I'm wrong, but I wonder if there's not that much that you can do about it while you're in it, because you're so entrenched in the whole system. But once you leave, you're a little bit further away from it.
Yeah. It started with, I now was married, so I would wake up with another person in my bed. And so I was used to, you start your day with worship music or something terrible will happen. And so, and here's my husband, and he's like, I don't need worship music. Or he would listen to, like, yeah, let's listen to music. Here's some really cool stuff. And it wasn't overtly Christian, or it wasn't Christian at all, but it was beautiful music. So that was a way that I had to instantly face, oh, so this is how it's going to be, or this is interesting, this is different.
Right.
And it hits me differently what I'm getting from listening to his music. His music is beautiful. And not these weird chants where you like positive talk yourself up, or positive self-God, like, oh, you're so good and I'm so nothing without you. And
okay,
it's very different to start your day with beauty that
Right.
touches the heart versus I have to listen to this stuff or my spirit will go astray. So that was
Right.
one way. And then a big other part was it just so happened that when got so busy with all this church stuff, and it was different groups, that I, in that time, went back to Germany. And that's when I read The Subtle Power of Spiritual Abuse for the first time.
Mhm.
So that was 3/4 of a year in after I got kicked out. And that's when I realized I need to take a sabbatical. So I
Mm.
told all these people when I came back that I did prayer ministry with that I'm withdrawing for a while. And they
Mhm.
understood. That was really cool. They understood. Uh, Something really sad is that some of these people from back then, they are now the people that are super stuck in conspiracy stuff.
Mm.
But I think our paths in a way had to go away because their theology and what my cult believed was kind of the same thing. They were just really nice people, and my cult people weren't. And so this
Mhm.
was one of those things that I needed to, which took me years, to realize that the theology in itself is mental health challenging, if not sickness inducing. So
Mm.
all those layers of letting beauty into my life without any further agenda of serving
Mhm.
me or God, and then taking a sabbatical and looking at what spiritual abuse is, what that is, understanding that people have put expectations on me that are I can never meet, never, will never
Yeah.
be enough. And that's kind of the spiritual abuse part. And then lastly, look at what do I actually believe about God? Why would
Mm.
God create people and then like this world is hell? If that is true, that I'm supposed to save 7 billion people, that is
Mhm.
hell. That is hell.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me think of many of the if then statements that we often tell ourselves. You know, if I don't listen to worship music in the morning, then the spirit won't be with me today. Or if I don't read this book, then whatever will occur. And it sounds like you really let go of some of those if then statements. Beauty could just be for beauty's sake. Music can be enjoyable just because it's good music,
Yeah.
or just because it connects somehow with you, but not necessarily with your spiritual side. Although it could, but it could just be a catchy beat that you enjoy while you cook lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and so letting go of those if then statements, and then pushing yourself to engage what you want to engage, because it sounds like you enjoy music, but when you add that pressure to say music needs to be this type of music, or it's satanic, or it's going to lead me astray, or it will mean this and this and this in my life, um, kind of wipes away that initial enjoyment and then puts a must do on it instead.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting how you were able to engage the things that you've always enjoyed. Because if you did a degree in theology, you probably enjoy theology,
Do.
and enjoying, and like what you do on this channel is in that realm. Um, but it doesn't have to be used as an if then statement. It can be used as a lens, as a broadening phenomenon, not a making smaller phenomenon.
Yeah. That's very good.
Yeah.
That speaks to me a lot. Yes.
Mm,
And I've
yeah.
really gotten into karaoke.
That's amazing. Yeah. Totally just the enjoyment of life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone, when I was in my deconstruction, someone gave me, or asked me a question: is your faith a puzzle or a telescope?
Mm.
So the way that I was engaging it was very much, God is a puzzle, and my job is to find all of the pieces on the edge and to put those in. That's my fence.
Yeah.
And then my lifelong journey is to put all the pieces together so that everything is there, everything fits. if there's a missing piece, I must go find it.
Mm-hmm.
I will not be complete without it.
Mm-hmm.
And this person really challenged me. What if you're actually meant to look through a telescope? And a telescope, you can zero in on one part of the sky, on one star, or one area, and you can actually learn more. But the possibility of learning everything is you're not going to. There's still a mystery that is going to continue to be present no matter how much you try to learn.
Yeah.
But that can be beautiful too. Like we can still stand out there in the pitch dark night and enjoy the sky with all of the mystery and all of the things that we do know from looking through a telescope.
Yeah.
They go together. They don't have to be separate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very beautiful and very different from my black and white thinking. You know, I have all the answers.
Mine too when I was younger. Yeah. Yeah. What did that do for you to be able to take away that mandate to look for all the answers?
Well, I was taught to like this taught self helplessness, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't trust that I would know anything. I was taught in those years in the cult to listen very closely to what the cult leader is saying and take it all and believe it all. And that was how I would get theological, you know, mysteries figured out. And
okay. So they're kind of the spoon feeder of
yes,
truth.
yes, I would get fed there, wouldn't I?
Mm-hmm.
And it was always psychologically mixed, so it was fascinating. But at the end of the day, it was just it was control. It was like I think what you can expect from Scientology or this group that we talked about last time, Nixvim, or however you pronounce that, and you go into belly gazing. You look at yourself and you think of yourself, you're like so interesting, so special at first, and then it turns into you're kind of such a mess. You'll be here for a long time, and if you can prove to us that you get our program, then you can rise up in the ranks. And so what you're saying is we're looking at the sky as you know, the bigness, the mystery of the beauty of God and of life, and we don't need to know everything. We can be happy resting in the things that we feel like we have experienced or we do know. And that reminds me a bit of something Richard Rohr says, that light is not, you can't see light, but by light you can see
everything else. Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. And that opened up my life. That opened up the opportunity to pursue acting, that opened up to pursue personal training, to pursue friendships with people that I may have not. Karaoke, going to the, before this whole pandemic thing, going to the, here in town, what's that called? The Legion, you know, where they do karaoke with old folks. And
cool.
Right, which, I've had wonderful encounters there with people, heartfelt talks and all that. I've prayed with people. I had amazing experiences there, but I went there to have a good time and said, Lord, come with us. So I know you're here. I know you're here. I know you're here. I know you're there. You're everywhere. And I will just ride on that wave and see whatever happens. So to live without an agenda, that is the true freedom that I have discovered for myself.
Yeah. How has that impacted your relationships to be able to live without an agenda?
It's my closest friends from here. I would say they have either grown with me on that path, because we would probably jive on that evangelical theology, but I would say very few people really were able to stay with me in that. I've lost a lot of friends over the past few years of my deconstruction. They just couldn't agree with theological conclusions I came to or accept it as truth from other people such as Baxter Kruger or Richard Rohr, Paul Young. They just were like, this is too extreme. Can't. And so a lot of friendships kind of fell to the wayside, and I guess that's okay. But others got really, really close, and that's wonderful. And with my husband, I mean, just recently I talked to a lady who got divorced after being in something from Bethel, like very Bethel inspired, and he was used to be at Bethel, and they were not able to weather the storm of life because the religious pressure was just so high. And I felt that. I would look at my husband like, what are you doing? Like, you're like a waste of time. You realize that? And so that judgmental thing that you tell yourself, but it says there, the spiritual man judges everybody after the spirit. But I had to learn, or no, I got to learn that judgment isn't what I do. Judgment is to deliver. So that's the biblical thing for judgment. The judges back then were deliverers. So they delivered them from things that weren't right. And so I'm not even delivering my husband. We're friends, we're best friends, we're soulmates, we're close, we're all that. And I learned to take a step back and stop the criticizing and appreciate. But like, if you want to talk about judgment, can we actually help people? And then it took my husband and my attempts to help him for him to finally say, stop it, you're not helping me. And so I kind of came to the end of myself. I just had to say, I don't know how to help anyone. I can just try to help myself and talk about what has helped me. That's all I'm doing now.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. How what is actually in our control, and in life, so little is actually in our control. But what is our own journey, or our own development, or our own learned response towards the challenging things that present themselves. But it's interesting, having been part of a system where it's like you were made responsible for other people, to call them out, but then realizing that doesn't work, and that doesn't make good marriages when one person is nitpicking the other, or kind of taking the other's journey into their own hands. So, yeah. But, and maybe this is a conversation for another time, but just how more conservative gender roles play into that.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Because as a woman, being taught that men have this like responsibility in the relationship, but then when they're not meeting that, what happens, and how the cult or the community can play into that sense of a failure by both parts, that they're not playing out that role. And oh man,
right.
Can of worms.
Yeah, that's part of that religious guilt, that the husband feels like, I'm not the leader, or the woman feels like, he's not doing it, so I'm guilting him. Yeah, totally. That's a huge topic.
Totally. Or on the other side, a woman saying, I want to have a career, and I'm okay with being the breadwinner, or like a couple where a woman works and earns most of the money and the man stays home, or there's more like fluidity in the gender roles, and in some communities that's not seen as okay. And what happens when they're in that community and that's the way that they function, or that they're working at their best if they function that way, but being told that they shouldn't function that way because of biblical manhood or biblical womanhood.
A huge new realm to abuse people, totally, and oppress, cause bondage, for sure. Yeah. I think what has really, really stood with me from what you asked today, which I love, that, you're asking questions. You're not telling me, here's what's wrong with you, and here are the prayers I need you to repeat, which sounds like a Catholic thing, and we would look down on the Catholics, but actually that's exactly what we did, believing that would magically change it. Is the questions about what were the costs of this life, and did it ever work? Did it ever work? And then also to open the horizon to telescope. What if your faith were a telescope? Yeah, it's very, very beautiful. Thank you. So I really would have needed someone like you 10 years ago. Now I can point people to you.
Wonderful.
I'll put your email address here in the description so people can reach out to you. And you have your own channel.
I do.
Yeah, I'll put the link for that in the description too.
All right.
Check out your conversations you're having with other people, including me. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for this conversation. It was really fun.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to our next time.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Bye.